You know, and
Are we gonna see Wolf in the?
of course we get this pivotal
A
stuff.
puff?
Like
We see a puff.
you know, it's interesting in the Wolf case because your friends will push you further than your enemies.
Trolling, or an Instagram caption that ruins someone's week. But this time felt different, quieter, colder, like something slipped out. That wasn't meant to be entertainment. One sentence changed everything. 50 Cent admitted he protected Lil Meech, and the name he mentioned in the same breath made the internet freeze. Diddy. Not rumors. Not allegedly. Not jokes with laughing emojis. Protection implies danger. Protection implies access. Protection implies something happening behind doors. Nobody's supposed to open, and suddenly people weren't laughing anymore. Because when 50 talks like this, he's not speculating. He's not clout chasing. He's not reaching. This is the same man who treats beef like chess and secrets like leverage. The wildest part? He didn't sound angry. He sounded calculated. And when a man like 50 Cent says he stepped in for a young artist to keep him safe, you don't ask if something happened, you ask how bad it was. And who else knew? The internet is used to 50 Cent talking reckless. That's his brand. Shock first, laughter later, cleanup never. But this time, this wasn't reckless. This was deliberate, because when 50 mentioned protecting Lil Meech, he didn't laugh. He didn't troll. He didn't throw in a punchline to soften the blow. He said it like someone stating a fact that had already been decided behind closed doors. And that's what made it unsettling. Lil Meech wasn't just any artist coming up.
He wasn't just chasing a buzz.
He was walking into the industry with a last name that already carried history, expectation, and baggage. The son of a legend stepping into a machine that doesn't care about legacy. Only leverage. 50 Cent knew that machine intimately. He's been inside boardrooms where smiles hide contracts. Inside studios where mentorship comes with strings. Inside parties where opportunity and exploitation stand way too close together. So when he said he stepped in, it wasn't about music notes or business disputes. It was about access. Protection doesn't mean advice. Protection doesn't mean guidance. Protection means something felt off enough to require intervention. That's where the tension started. 50 didn't accuse. He didn't spell it out. He let implication do the work. An implication, when it involves power, is louder than any allegation. He framed it like responsibility. Like he'd seen this movie before and refused to let the ending play out again. He talked about being older now. About knowing how quickly young artists get swallowed when fame shows up before wisdom. And when he said Diddy's name in that context, it wasn't casual. It was heavy, because Diddy isn't just a celebrity. He's an institution, a man who's been around since before some of these artists were born, a gatekeeper with influence that extends far beyond music. When someone like that gets mentioned alongside the word protected, people stop asking surface level questions. They start asking why. Fans immediately split into camps. Some saw 50 as a guardian, the guy who steps in when things feel wrong. They praised him for using his position to shield someone younger, especially someone who didn't fully understand the environment yet. Others weren't so comfortable. They asked why Lil Meech needed protection from anyone at that level. They asked why boundaries had to be enforced at all. They asked what kind of situation makes a veteran like 50 feel. The need to step in publicly. Those questions didn't come with answers. Just silence. And silence in this industry is never empty. It's packed with NDAs, power dynamics, and stories that never make it to camera. People started revisiting the timeline. Lil Meech's rapid rise. The sudden proximity to major figures. The rooms he was reportedly in before he even had time to understand the rules. None of it looked suspicious on its own. But stacked together, it made people uneasy. 50 Cent didn't give details because he didn't need to. He knew the implication alone would be enough to spark conversation, and maybe serve as a warning. Because when someone like 50 talks this way, he's not speaking to fans, he's speaking to the room. The industry heard it loud and clear. This wasn't beef. This wasn't trolling. This wasn't clout chasing. This was a line being drawn. 50 didn't frame himself as a hero. He framed himself as someone who's been through enough to recognize danger before it makes headlines. Someone who understands that young artists don't always know when they're being handled instead of helped. And that's what changed the temperature. Because if Lil Meech needed protection, how many others didn't get it? The conversation stopped being about one name. It became about a system. About how power works when youth, fame, and access collide. About how mentorship can blur into manipulation if nobody steps in, and 50 stepping in publicly. That wasn't accidental. That was a signal. To Lil Meech. It said, "You're not alone in this room." To the industry, it said, "I'm watching." To everyone else, it said, "This isn't just jokes anymore." By the time people finished replaying that clip, one thing was clear. This wasn't a story about what already happened. It was about what almost did. And when a man like 50 Cent implies, he stopped something before it crossed a line. The real question isn't whether to believe him. It's why he felt the need to say it out loud at all. Because once that door gets cracked, the rest of the story doesn't stay hidden for long. And this was only the beginning. The moment that clip circulated, the internet didn't debate it. It reacted. Fast, loud, reckless. Because anytime 50 Cent says something that isn't a joke, people know better than to treat it lightly. This wasn't Instagram trolling with a soundtrack of laughing emojis. This was a man choosing his words like he knew they'd echo. And echo they did. Memes came first. Because humor is how the internet copes with discomfort. People joked that 50 was running a rap witness protection program. Others compare him to a bouncer standing at the velvet rope saying, "Nah, not this one." Funny on the surface, but the laughter felt nervous. Because underneath the jokes was a question nobody wanted to say out loud. Why would Lil Meech need protection at all? That question spread faster than the memes. Fans started dissecting every old interaction they could find. Every photo, every clip, every interview where names crossed paths. Moments that once felt harmless suddenly felt loaded. Not criminal, not explicit, just uncomfortable in hindsight. That's how patterns work. They don't scream, they whisper. Celebrities didn't rush to comment directly. They never do when power is involved. Instead, the subtweets came rolling in. Quotes about guarding young talent, vague posts about boundaries in the industry, long captions about mentorship that said everything and nothing. At the same time, everyone knew who the conversation was circling. And nobody wanted to be the one to say it outright, because saying it outright comes with consequences. The wild part, 50 didn't clarify anything. He didn't walk it back. He didn't elaborate. He let the internet fill in the gaps, which only made the gaps feel bigger. People who know 50's history understood the move immediately. This is the same man who treats information like leverage, who never unloads everything at once, who knows that saying just enough is sometimes more powerful than telling the whole story. He wasn't trying to expose. He was trying to signal. And signals aren't for fans, they're for insiders. That's when the tone online shifted from curiosity to unease, because 50 doesn't warn unless he believes something's worth stopping. He survived too much, lost too many people, and watched too many young artists get swallowed to play moral theater. So when he said he stepped in, it reframed the narrative. This wasn't about business disputes. This wasn't about ego clashes. This wasn't about clout. This was about environment. Fans started asking sharper questions. Why do young artists get rushed into rooms they don't understand? Why does mentorship sometimes feel like control? Why do certain powerful figures always surround themselves with youth at vulnerable stages? Nobody accused. Nobody named crimes. But the discomfort was undeniable, and discomfort is dangerous in an industry built on silence. Lil Meech stayed quiet through it all, which only added weight to the conversation. No denial, no explanation. No social media post saying everything was fine. Just absence. And absence, in moments like this, speaks louder than statements. People read that silence in different ways. Some saw it as protection working. Others saw it as confirmation that something needed to be shut down quietly. Many simply didn't know what to think, which is exactly where 50 wanted them, because confusion slows things down. It forces people to pay attention instead of reacting blindly. And slowing the narrative down is how you keep control of it. Meanwhile, Diddy's name sat at the center of the storm like a gravity well. Nobody rushed to defend him aggressively. Nobody launched an all-out rebuttal. That alone raised eyebrows. Because when accusations are false, responses are usually loud. This time, the energy was careful. Calculated. People began pointing out how often Diddy's name appears in conversations about power and proximity. Not wrongdoing. Power, access, influence, the ability to open doors and shape careers. And power doesn't need to commit crimes to be dangerous. Power just needs imbalance. That's the conversation that scared people, because imbalance is harder to argue against, harder to dismiss, harder to meme away. 50 Cent's statement cracked open that door without walking through it. He let everyone else stare inside and decide what they thought they saw, and the industry noticed. Because when someone with nothing to gain speaks up, people listen. 50 doesn't need Diddy's approval. He doesn't need protection. He doesn't need alliances. He survived worse than industry beef. That's why his words landed like a warning flare, not for fans. For rooms behind the scenes. By the end of this phase, the narrative had changed completely. This wasn't about whether 50 was right or wrong. It wasn't about defending or attacking Diddy. It wasn't even about Lil Meech anymore. It was about how many situations never make headlines because someone steps in quietly, and how many do because nobody does. And that realization made people uncomfortable. In a way memes couldn't fix, because if 50 Cent is publicly admitting he protected someone, how many stories never get told? And how many warnings get ignored until it's too late? The internet moved fast, but this story didn't. It slowed down, thickened, got heavier, and everyone could feel that whatever this was pointing to hadn't reached its end yet. It had only reached its pressure point. The aftermath didn't explode into a courtroom drama or a headline war. It did something more unsettling. It rearranged the room. After 50 Cent said what he said, people started moving differently. Not loudly, not publicly. Quiet shifts, changed seating, different guest lists, fewer shared photos, subtle distance where closeness used to be normal. That's how you know something landed. Because when powerful, people feel exposed, even indirectly. They don't argue online. They adjust behind the scenes. Lil Meech's name stopped being used casually. Interviews danced around him instead of pulling him in. Invitations that once felt automatic suddenly came with conditions. Not punishment, protection. And that's the part that matters. Because protection only becomes necessary when the environment feels unsafe. 50 Cent didn't need to keep talking. His silence after the statement did the work for him. He let the industry show its hand. Who stayed close? Who backed away? Who pretended nothing happened but clearly took notes? That silence wasn't indifference. It was confidence. Confidence that the message had already been received. Public perception shifted too. Not dramatically, but permanently. People stopped viewing Lil Meech as just another rising star. They started seeing him as someone who had to be shielded from something bigger than fame. And once that framing exists, it never fully disappears. Every future interaction gets examined through that lens. Every mentor questioned. Every opportunity re-evaluated. Every room scrutinized. That's not paranoia. That's awareness. Diddy's single quotes. S name didn't collapse under the weight of the implication. Power doesn't work like that. What changed was the tone around him. Conversations became cautious. Praise got quieter. Distance got easier to justify, not because anyone proved wrongdoing, but because proximity suddenly felt risky. And in an industry driven by image, risk is radioactive. The most interesting part? Nobody rushed to clear anything up. No long statements. No aggressive denials. No, this is all lies, media tours. Just quiet, which told people everything they needed to know. Because when nothing happened, it meant something already had. 50 Cent's reputation shifted too, but not in the way people expected. He wasn't painted as messy or reckless. He was seen as something more dangerous, a man who doesn't need to expose to control the narrative, someone who understands that prevention doesn't make noise. It leaves gaps where disasters were supposed to be Fans started connecting dots that weren't even meant to be connected. Not conspiracies, patterns. How often young artists get rushed. How often power hides behind mentorship language. How often warnings only get taken seriously after something goes wrong. And suddenly, 50's statement felt less like gossip and more like a public safety announcement, disguised as street talk the industry hates. That dot because it forces a conversation. Nobody wants on record dot what responsibility do veterans have to protect younger talent? When does guidance turn into control? And who steps in when the balance tips? Those questions don't have clean answers, but they linger. And lingering questions are bad for business built on silence. Lil Meech continued moving forward, but with an invisible buffer now. Less exposure to rooms he didn't choose. More intentional placement. Fewer ambiguous situations. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd miss it. But people who know the industry saw it immediately. That's protection working. And that's the part that scared. People dot because it implied that something could have gone left and didn't because someone intervened. Not reacted. Intervened. That distinction matters. This story didn't end with proof. It ended with prevention. And prevention doesn't come with receipts. It comes with absence. Absence of scandal. Absence of fallout. Absence of headlines that could have been much worse, which is why this moment stuck. Because it wasn't about tearing anyone down. It was about drawing a boundary in a space where boundaries rarely survive. 50. Cent didn't frame himself as a savior. He framed himself as someone who's been around long enough to recognize danger early, and old enough not to play dumb about it. That's not entertainment. That's experience. The internet eventually moved on. Because it always does. New scandals replaced this one. New names got dragged. New memes filled the void. But this story didn't disappear. It settled into the background like a caution. Sign everyone pretends not to see, until the next time someone almost crosses it. Because now, whenever 50 speaks, people listen differently. Not for jokes. Not for beef. For warnings. And whenever Lil Meech enters a new room, people wonder who's watching. And who's keeping it safe? This wasn't a bombshell meant to destroy. It was a line meant to protect. And lines like that don't fade. They get remembered the next time someone thinks nobody's paying attention. Because if one thing became clear after all of this, it's that some stories never make headlines for a reason. Not because nothing happened, but because someone made sure it didn't. Before you scroll away like this, didn't just rearrange how you see the industry. Let's pause right here. You clicked because it sounded wild. You stayed because it sounded serious. And you're still here because you know this wasn't just jokes and Instagram captions. This was power getting checked without a press release. So don't play quiet now. Smash that like button like it owes you back rent and interest. Hit subscribe like you don't want to miss the next bombshell before it hits the blogs. And drop a comment because this story doesn't end where the headlines stop. Do you think 50 was warning the public or the industry? Was this mentorship, protection, or a silent line in the sand? And how many stories never come out because someone steps in just in time? Say it with your chest. Argue, disagree, connect the dots. This comment section isn't for politeness, it's for pressure. Because let's be honest, scandals don't just appear. They're usually preceded by silence, power, and people pretending not to see what's right in front of them. And when someone like 50 Cent decides to speak without laughing it off, that's not entertainment, that's intent. If you're tired of surface-level takes, fake outrage, and stories getting buried under memes, you already know why you're here. We don't sugarcoat power plays. We don't ignore warning signs. And we don't wait for disasters to pretend we always knew. New stories drop constantly.
New names.
Same patterns. Same quiet rooms. So stay locked in. Stay observant. Stay ahead of the narrative. Because the real stories aren't always the loud ones. They're the ones someone tried to stop before they got loud. This is Salib and Stady, where the jokes stop. And the truth gets uncomfortable. And the truth gets